Your failure. You rose from the ashes. That's the power of being chosen. It haunts your enemies. The more they try to bury you, the deeper your roots grow. The more they try to erase you, the louder your presence becomes. The enemy never attacked you because you were weak. It attacked because it saw what you were becoming. If you had no power, there would be no resistance. If you had no purpose, there would be no opposition. Understand this. The weight of your struggle was the measure of your future. You weren't just taking a test. You were proving you could handle the throne that's been waiting for you. You weren't just enduring random pain. You were being graded in silence. Every battle you fought wasn't just about survival. It was an answer to a divine question. Would you still stand when everything collapsed? Would you still push forward when every door slammed shut? Would you still believe when silence was your only reply? These weren't just challenges, they were proof. And now, the proof is undeniable. You didn't just pass, you scored 100%. And when a chosen one passes with distinction, the entire world feels it. The air shifts, the ground shakes. Doors that never opened before suddenly swing wide. People who once ignored you suddenly take notice. The same ones who doubted you will soon have to acknowledge you. They will watch in disbelief as you walk into places they never thought you'd reach. Your elevation is not a suggestion. It is not a possibility. It is a declaration. Your trials have spoken. Your endurance has testified. And now, the verdict is in. You are ready. Not by the standards of this world. Not by the approval of people, but by something greater. And when you are marked for greatness, no opposition can cancel it. They thought they were stopping you. Instead, they were setting the stage. Now, rise. The throne is waiting. So tell me, Chosen One, are you ready to uncover what your 100% truly means? This isn't just another message. This is a revelation. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you're ready to step into what has already been declared yours. Every second you stay, another piece of the puzzle falls into place. The deeper we go, the more undeniable your calling becomes. And trust me, if you truly are one of the chosen, you'll feel the pull to stay until the very last word. Now, let's break this down step by step, because what comes next will change everything. Number 1. They thought you were losing. They didn't realize you were speaking a language they couldn't read. The weak will always mock what they can't comprehend. They laughed at your losses, not realizing you were stacking lessons. They celebrated your silence, unaware you were gathering power. The moment they understand, it will be too late. They saw the struggle, but they never saw the system behind it. They thought you were just unlucky, just another person fumbling through life while they sat back and judged. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, is that you weren't playing the same game. You were being tested, not by the world's shallow measures, but by a higher standard. A divine script was being written around your every step, and they were too blind to see it. They saw closed doors. You were being filtered. They saw betrayal. You were being refined. They saw delays. You were being positioned. The unchosen can't comprehend the path of the chosen because they were never built for it. Their minds are wired for shortcuts, for applause, for easy validation. But when you walk a chosen path, none of those things apply to you. You weren't given hollow victories. You were given battles that would forge you into something unbreakable. The system wasn't against you. It was working for you. But the fools who mocked you, they were playing against the system itself. And now, they're about to find out what happens when you challenge the alignment of destiny. Some of you questioned yourself because of them. Let's be honest. When everything was silent, when no one understood, when you felt alone in the fight, you wondered, am I really chosen? How dare you doubt? Do you think power is handed out like candy? Do you think greatness comes gift-wrapped? If it were easy, everyone would walk this path. But you were given trials that would have broken the weak. And instead of shattering, you adapted. Instead of quitting, you endured. Tell me, what kind of person still stands after the amount of fire you've been through? The only kind that matters. You see, they mistook your suffering for failure, but that's because they were never taught the language of transformation. When a caterpillar goes into the cocoon, outsiders see stillness, dormancy, silence. They assume nothing is happening, but inside, a complete restructuring is taking place. Cells are being torn apart and reassembled. Old parts are being destroyed to make way for something stronger. The process is violent. The process is painful. But by the time the world realizes what's happened, the sky is no longer the limit. It's the starting point. That's what's happening to you. Your enemies spoke too soon. The ones who called you a failure, who wrote you off, who dismissed your struggle as weakness, they played themselves. Because while they were laughing at your breaking point, the universe was aligning itself in your favor. While they were mocking you, the very fabric of existence was weaving together your rise. And here's the part they'll never recover from. They had the chance to respect you when it would have mattered. They had the chance to stand by you, to support you, to listen instead of mock. But they chose to reveal their true nature. And now, they will be forced to witness your transformation from the very seats they thought you'd never rise above. That's how the system works. When you are chosen, every loss is a deposit into your future. Every setback is a recalibration. Every betrayal is a reassignment of energy. They stole from you? Watch how it returns tenfold. They slandered your name? Watch how your influence grows beyond them. They locked doors? Watch how entire new pathways manifest from nothing. They played with the system. They challenged the natural order of what was meant for you. And now, the balance is swinging back. The problem was never that you were weak. The problem was that you were being calibrated. Every hardship wasn't an attack. It was a question. Will they still trust when there's no proof? Will they still believe when everything is silent? Will they still rise when everything says to quit? And you answered those questions. Not with words, not with empty promises, but with endurance. You could have folded, but you didn't. You could have cursed the process, but you didn't. You could have given up, but you didn't. And that is why you passed. That is why they will never understand. Because while they were busy chasing approval, you were being molded into something that doesn't need permission to rise. They spoke a language of comfort, of validation, of easy success. But you were learning something far more ancient, far more powerful, a language only the chosen will ever understand. A language that breaks chains. A language that reshapes destinies. A language that forces doors open that were never meant to be closed. And now, that language is fully formed inside you. It is no longer a lesson. It is a weapon. Your very existence is now a testament to what happens when the chosen refuse to quit. So let them pretend they still don't understand. Let them act confused when your elevation begins. Let them whisper, gossip, panic. It doesn't matter anymore. They already lost. Number 2. They measured you with the wrong scale, and now they can't fathom your rise. The blind always judge by what they can see, but true power isn't in what's visible, it's in what cannot be destroyed. They thought they had you figured out. They scanned your life for numbers, for applause, for evidence of success by their shallow metrics. When they didn't see wealth, status, or validation, they assumed you were losing. They measured you like they measure themselves, by hollow achievements, fleeting praise, and fragile connections. But what they failed to realize is that you were never being evaluated by this world's grading system. You weren't chasing cheap victories. You were being forged in silence. While they obsessed over how far ahead or behind you were, something greater was happening, something they had no ability to track. They saw delays, but patience was being developed. They saw losses, but surrender was being refined. They saw rejection, but trust was being tested. Every moment they laughed at your struggle, they were revealing their ignorance. Because you weren't in a race against them, you were being prepared for something that doesn't crumble under pressure. You see, the unchosen crave speed. Quick results, instant gratification, shortcuts. They believe power is in what you can grab now. They can't comprehend a process that requires waiting, refining, or sacrifice. And that's why they will never understand you. Because you didn't beg for a throne. You let the fire make you worthy of it. This is why you had to be hidden. This is why opportunities had to pass you by. Not because you weren't good enough, but because they weren't good enough for you. Some doors remained locked, not to punish you, but to protect you. Some people had to leave, not because you were unworthy, but because they were weakening your foundation. Some prayers had to go unanswered, because if they had been granted, you would have settled for far less than what was meant for you. They thought rejection meant failure, but rejection was redirection. They thought silence meant you were forgotten, but silence was the final stage of preparation. And now, they're about to witness something they were never prepared for. Your undeniable rise. The very things they used to count you out are now the very things that qualified you. They measured by what was seen, but your value was always in what they couldn't see. Your endurance, your resilience, your ability to stand when everything said you should fall. That's why their opinion never mattered. That's why their laughter was meaningless. Because they were grading an exam they weren't even qualified to take. You weren't being built for speed. You were being built for impact. And when impact is your goal, time bends in your favor. Some of them thought they won because they got to certain milestones faster. But tell me, what good is a quick rise when the foundation is made of glass? The world loves to elevate people prematurely, to hand out thrones to those who have never been tested. And what happens? They collapse under the weight of what they were never prepared to carry. That's why your path was different. That's why you had to wait. Because when you arrive, you will not break. The ones who mocked your struggles will never understand how the same suffering they dismissed became the source of your power. And now they will see the difference between a self-made empire and a divinely built kingdom. They ran their race on flat ground, while you climbed a mountain. But the thing about mountains is this: the higher the climb, the greater the view. So let them keep counting numbers. Let them chase applause. Let them measure their worth by how many people approve of them. You have something far greater. You have been graded by fire. And fire does not bow to opinion. Number 3. They thought silence meant you were forgotten. They didn't know it was the final stage of your test. The greatest warriors are not made in battle. They are made in the silence before the war, when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when it's just them and their own doubts. They thought your silence meant you had lost. They assumed your lack of movement was proof that you had been abandoned. They looked at your life and saw no breakthrough, no sudden success, no clear sign of progress. And they laughed. But what they didn't understand was that the silence was never empty. It was the final proof of your readiness. You see, when the real test begins, the teacher does not speak. No hints, no shortcuts, no sudden interventions. The student is left to rely on what they have already learned. That is exactly what happened to you. The silence wasn't a sign of your failure. It was the confirmation that the time had come for you to prove yourself. And most people fail right here. Silence is where the weak crumble. It's where the impatient start making reckless moves. It's where desperation takes over and people begin chasing validation, forcing outcomes, settling for less than they were meant for. They mistake silence for abandonment. They assume if nothing is happening, then nothing ever will. And so they break, right before their breakthrough. But you didn't. You stayed. You endured. You didn't get desperate and beg for shortcuts. You didn't rush into situations that would have weakened you. You held your ground. And that is why you passed. Because silence is not a sign of absence. It is a sign of trust. You were being observed. Every move you made, every thought you had, every moment you chose faith over fear, trust over doubt, patience over panic, it was all being counted. And the moment you stopped needing proof was the moment you became proof. Look at history. Every true warrior, every true leader, every true chosen one has walked through a season of silence. David was anointed king, but spent years in caves, alone, hunted, waiting. Joseph was given a dream of power, but spent over a decade in prisons and pits before he saw a throne. Even the strongest ones must face the test of silence, because if you cannot hold faith in the dark, you are not ready for the light. And you were tested. You were given every reason to quit. Every door was closed. Every voice was silent. The people you expected to show up never did. The signs you begged for never came. And yet, you did not fall. That is why your rise is different. That is why your next chapter will not look like theirs. Because while they were busy making noise, chasing applause, forcing doors open that were never meant for them, you were proving you could hold power without panic. You were showing that when everything seemed still, you still believed. You weren't just being tested on whether you could wait. You were being tested on whether you could trust without proof. And because you passed that test, the silence is about to break. Those same people who thought you were done, they are about to watch you walk into everything they thought you'd never reach. And they won't understand how it happened. They won't understand why doors are flying open for you now. They won't understand why favor is falling into your lap. But you will, because you stood when others ran. You stayed when others broke. You trusted when others doubted. And now it's your turn. The silence was never empty. It was never wasted. It was just the last step before everything changes. And now it's time for your next move. Number 4. You thought you took a wrong turn, but the road was rewritten for you. The path of the chosen is never a straight line. It bends, it breaks, it forces you through fire. But every detour was designed to make sure you arrived as a conqueror, not a captive. They told you that you messed up, that you missed your opportunity, that you wasted time, made the wrong choices, walked in the wrong direction. And for a moment, you might have believed them. You looked at your life and wondered, what if I had done things differently? But here's what they never understood. You were never lost. Every so-called wrong turn was actually precision. Every delay was a divine rerouting. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every disappointment. It wasn't just something to survive. It was something designed. You weren't just moving through life randomly. You were walking through a test, one that was crafted specifically for you. And the only way to pass was to keep going, even when nothing made sense. Every betrayal wasn't just pain. It was a question. Will you become bitter, or will you become better? Every delay wasn't just frustrating. It was a test. Do you truly trust the process, or only when it's convenient? Every disappointment wasn't a mistake. It was a filter. Will you let this break you, or will you let it build you? Most people fail this test. They get trapped in bitterness, stuck in resentment, locked in cycles of self-doubt and regret. They replay the past instead of using it as fuel for the future. But you kept moving, even when you were tired, even when you had every reason to stop, even when you didn't realize it was a test. And because you kept moving, you passed. They looked at your path and saw detours. But detours don't exist for the chosen. There is no off course when you are being guided by something greater. There is no wrong turn when every road leads exactly where it was always meant to go. Understand this. You were being positioned. Some doors had to close because they would have trapped you in mediocrity. Some relationships had to fall apart because they were distractions disguised as blessings. Some prayers had to go unanswered because they would have given you what you wanted at the cost of what you needed. What if I told you that the thing you thought was your biggest mistake was actually your greatest redirection? What if I told you that the thing you lost was never meant to go with you into your next level? What if I told you that everything you called failure was actually a setup for something bigger? Because that's exactly what happened. You were never being denied. You were being prepared. The doors that closed didn't close on you. They closed for you. The things that didn't work out weren't evidence of your failure. They were evidence of your protection. They thought they saw you fail. What they really saw was you being positioned for something greater than they could ever imagine. And now? Now you see it too. Now you understand why the things you wanted never came when you thought they should. Now you understand why certain people had to walk away. Now you understand why everything felt like a struggle when all you were trying to do was move forward. Because forward wasn't the goal. Right was the goal. And now you're exactly where you need to be. So let them talk about how long it took. Let them mock the route you had to take. Let them think they had a better plan for your life. Their voices don't matter anymore. Because while they wasted time doubting you, the very path they laughed at was setting you up for a level they will never reach. And now, you're stepping into it. Number 5. They didn't see the work, but now they'll have to respect the results. The world honors the ones who rise in public, but heaven counts the ones who built themselves in private. They only clap for what they can see. They only respect victories that come with applause, trophies, and recognition. They don't understand the power of what happens in the dark, in the silence, in the hidden places where no one is watching. And that's why they underestimated you. They thought you were doing nothing. They assumed you were stuck, stagnant, waiting for a miracle to save you. But while they were watching, judging, and gossiping, you were working. You were growing in the silence. You were refining your spirit in isolation. You were sharpening your weapons in the dark. The nights of doubt, the moments of exhaustion, the days where you felt unseen. Those were your training grounds. And now they will see the difference between someone who was handed their success and someone who built it in fire. Most people only push forward when there's an audience. They only fight when there's someone to praise them. They only sacrifice when they know there's an immediate reward. That's why their victories are weak. Because they only know how to perform, not how to endure. But you sacrificed without recognition. You suffered without sympathy. You made decisions in the dark that no one will ever know about. And while the world only values public success, heaven saw everything. Every unseen act of faith counted. Every moment you could have quit but didn't was noted. Every sacrifice that cost you but nobody else knew about, that was your extra credit. And that's why your rise will be different. Because you didn't just barely make it. You earned something greater than those who took the easy road. You didn't just do what was required. You went beyond it. In school, extra credit isn't for everyone. It's not for the ones who just want to pass. It's for the ones who want excellence. It's for the ones who go beyond the minimum, who put in the effort when no one is forcing them to. That's exactly what you did. You worked when nothing seemed to be changing. You kept pushing when everything told you to stop. You built when there was no proof that it would ever pay off. And now, everything is about to shift. Because what happens to the ones who do extra credit? They don't just pass, they surpass. While others are stuck in cycles, you are being elevated beyond what even you expected. The ones who laughed, who ignored, who thought you were wasting your time. They will watch in confusion as doors open for you that were never even in their reach. Because when you show up, you're not coming empty-handed. You're bringing weight. You're bringing proof. You're bringing receipts from battles they never even knew you fought. They thought you were being overlooked. They thought you were forgotten. They thought all your effort was wasted. What they don't realize is that your unseen sacrifices created a momentum that cannot be stopped. And now you will move at a speed they cannot comprehend. Because you weren't just waiting, you were preparing. And now it's time to collect. Number 6. You were supposed to break, but you became indestructible. They designed the storm to sink you. They sent the fire to consume you. They orchestrated the war to end you. And yet, here you are, standing in the aftermath, stronger than ever. Now, they fear what happens next. Some struggles aren't just difficult, They are strategic attacks designed to wipe you out. What you went through wasn't just bad luck, wasn't just a rough season, wasn't just a coincidence. No, it was calculated. Every betrayal, every loss, every delay, every closed door, it was all meant to break you beyond repair. But they underestimated one thing. You don't break, you evolve. The fire they sent to consume you, it forged you into something unrecognizable. The weight they placed on you, it strengthened you instead of crushing you. The war they waged against you, it only taught you how to fight better. That's why you're still here. Because you weren't just enduring, you were outlasting. Understand this. You were never the weak one. You were never the one at a disadvantage. The reason you felt so much pressure, so much resistance, so much opposition wasn't because you were unworthy. It was because you were a threat. Weak people don't get attacked this way. The powerless don't attract this level of warfare. The average never has to fight like this. But you, the moment you stepped into your identity, the moment you became aware of what you carry, the battle intensified. Because they knew, if you ever made it through, if you ever figured out who you were, if you ever stood back up after everything they did to knock you down, nothing could stop you. And now they have to deal with the version of you that survived. They threw everything they had at you. They counted on you to quit. They waited for you to fold, to disappear, to drown in the struggle. And yet, you outlived it all. Some people who went through less than you never recovered. They let the pain consume them. They let bitterness take over. They surrendered to the pressure. But not you. You lost things, yes. You cried, yes. You had moments where you felt like giving up, yes. But you never surrendered to defeat. And that's what makes you different. Because now you walk with the knowledge of someone who has been to hell and back. You carry the weight of every lesson, every scar, every battle you fought in silence. You don't just have strength, you have experience. You don't just have faith, you have proof. And that makes you dangerous. Because now, when the next storm comes, you won't even flinch. When the next enemy rises, you won't even react. When the next challenge tries to shake you, it will find nothing to grip onto. Because you are no longer moved by the things that once shook you. You're untouchable now. The worst already happened, and it failed to destroy you. And do you know what happens next? The balance shifts. Because you spent so long on defense, surviving, enduring, outlasting. But now it's your turn. Now, you don't just survive, you conquer. Now, you don't just withstand attacks, you advance. Now, you don't just fight battles, you win wars. Because what they never accounted for, what they never saw coming, was that you wouldn't just make it through. You would come out unshakable. And that is their greatest fear. Number 7. They thought you needed evidence, but you moved without it. Anyone can believe when the road is clear. Anyone can trust when the answers are obvious. But the chosen, they walk blindfolded into the unknown, guided by a force greater than sight. Knowledge is easy. Anyone can memorize words, repeat phrases, nod at the right times. But trust, that's where most people fail. Because trust doesn't ask, do you understand? Trust asks, will you obey even when nothing makes sense? And that's what they never understood about you. They thought they were watching someone who was lost, confused, without direction. But what they were actually witnessing was something far more terrifying. Someone who moved forward without needing proof. That is the kind of faith that changes everything. Because the world teaches people to wait for signs, to move only when it's safe, to act only when they have guarantees. But the chosen, they walk into the unknown without hesitation, without clarity, without backup, because they know that what is unseen is more real than what is visible. And that is why you passed. Because you didn't just study faith, you lived it. You didn't just talk about trust, you became it. You moved when nothing was moving. You obeyed when the path was unclear. You held on when everyone else let go. And now they will see the difference between those who rely on proof and those who walk by conviction. Because the ones who demanded evidence will always be a step behind. They waited for security while you built your foundation in uncertainty. They waited for applause while you worked in silence. They waited for a guarantee while you created your own. And now, they will watch as everything falls into place for you. Because the ones who trust without needing proof are the ones who receive what others will never touch. Look back for a moment. Think about how many times you almost let doubt take over. How many times you asked yourself, is this even worth it? How many times you wondered, am I being foolish? Am I chasing something that isn't real? Yet something deep inside you refused to let go. That wasn't luck. That wasn't random. That was the test. Would you still trust when everything said to stop? Would you still believe when all you had was silence? Would you still move forward when every step felt like walking off a cliff? And the answer, you did. That's why you passed. That's why you stand where you are today, stronger than before, unshaken by things that once terrified you. Because you don't just have knowledge, you have proof in your own bones. They will ask you how you knew. How did you know it would work? How did you know everything would fall into place? How did you keep going when nothing made sense? And you will smile because they still don't get it. You didn't know. You just trusted. And that made all the difference. Number 8. They thought you were stuck. They had no idea you were being positioned. The impatient grab what is easy. The chosen wait for what is unstoppable. They whispered that you were wasting time. They mocked you, said you were falling behind, said you should have been further by now. While they rushed ahead, while they snatched whatever opportunities came their way, you stayed still. You refused to move until it was right. And they mistook that stillness for stagnation. They assumed you were losing because you weren't running at their speed. But what they never understood is that true power is never rushed. You weren't stuck. You were being strategically positioned. Most people would have cracked under the waiting. They would have settled, compromised, taken the nearest option just to feel like they were making progress. But you trusted the process even when it made no sense. You sat in the silence. You held your ground. You let doors close that you could have pried open. And that is why what is coming next for you will be beyond anything they have ever seen. Because while they were chasing quick success, you were being built for something that lasts. Look around. How many people do you know who rushed into something they thought was a blessing, only to watch it collapse? How many people forced open doors, only to realize they walked straight into a trap? That could have been you. But something greater was blocking you, redirecting you, protecting you. And now, the balance shifts. Because those same people who laughed at your patience will soon watch in disbelief as doors swing open for you without struggle. The things they begged for, you will walk into effortlessly. The opportunities they compromised for will be handed to you without begging, without forcing, without playing their games. Because this was never about speed. It was about alignment. You didn't miss anything. You weren't left behind. You weren't overlooked. Every delay was calculated. Every closed door was intentional. Every moment of waiting was precision, not punishment. You weren't just waiting. You were being prepared. And now, what is coming won't be something you have to chase. It will be something that is drawn to you. Something that matches your level. Something that meets the real version of you, not the version that would have settled years ago. This is why patience was required. Because the throne you were meant to sit on wasn't ready yet. The rooms you were meant to enter weren't aligned yet. The people who were supposed to be connected to you weren't in position yet. And now everything is shifting. Now the foundation is solid. Now, when you step into what's meant for you, nothing will be able to take it away. Because when you are truly chosen, your destiny is not on their schedule. It's on divine timing. And that time is now. Number 9. They thought rejecting you was the end. They had no idea it was the setup. They thought closing the door on you would stop you. They thought pushing you out would erase you. They didn't realize that rejection was the very thing that would set you apart. Let's get something straight. You were never meant to fit in. The world tried to convince you that rejection meant failure, that being overlooked meant you weren't good enough. They laughed when doors slammed in your face. They assumed you weren't capable because you weren't chosen by them. But what they never understood, you were never waiting for their approval in the first place. They rejected you. Good. That was the best thing they ever did for you. Because now you're free. Free from rooms that would have suffocated you. Free from people who would have drained you. Free from spaces that never saw your value. Because they weren't meant to. Not everyone can recognize what's rare. Not everyone can handle something powerful. And you carry something that only the right people will ever be able to see. Some of you still don't fully grasp this. You're still looking at rejection like it was some kind of loss. But tell me, would you rather be trapped in a room that limits you, or placed exactly where you were meant to be? Because that's what was happening the whole time. They weren't rejecting you, they were redirecting you. Every time you were overlooked, misunderstood, underestimated, it wasn't about you. It was about positioning. You weren't supposed to blend in. You weren't supposed to follow their script. You weren't supposed to lower yourself just to be accepted by people who were never even meant to be part of your journey. The rejection hurt, yes. The betrayals cut deep. The closed doors felt personal. But now, take a step back. Look at where you are. Look at who you've become because of it. The same people who dismissed you are still stuck in the same cycles. The same places that didn't see your worth are still chasing mediocrity. And You are rising beyond them. They didn't recognize your value. That wasn't your loss. That was theirs. You weren't supposed to be in their rooms. You were meant to build your own. They thought rejecting you was a statement, but what they really did, they made space for something greater. Look at history. Every person who shifted the world was rejected first. Every great leader, every true innovator, every chosen one, they were all overlooked before they were undeniable. Joseph was rejected by his own brothers before he ruled over a nation. David was dismissed by his own father before he was anointed king. Even the greatest among us have had doors slammed in their faces before walking into their destiny. So what makes you think your story will be any different? Some of you have spent too long mourning doors that needed to close. You've wasted energy trying to prove your worth to people who were never supposed to have access to you in the first place. Stop trying to force what was already removed. The wrong rooms had to reject you so the right ones could recognize you. The places that didn't see your value would have only held you back. The people who dismissed you would have only drained you. The opportunities that passed you by would have only distracted you. And now, you're stepping into alignment. The right doors don't require begging. The right people don't need convincing. The right opportunities don't come with conditions that force you to shrink. The very thing you once cried over is now the reason you're free. Because rejection wasn't punishment. It was protection. It was heaven's way of saying, not here. Keep going. And now, when the right doors open, you will walk through them with confidence, not desperation. Because you know what it feels like to be unwanted. You know what it's like to be counted out. And that's why, when you step into your next season, you will never again question your worth. You weren't just rejected, you were rerouted. And now, the path is clear. Number 10. You thought you were forgotten, but they were saying your name in rooms you hadn't even entered yet. You worried that no one saw you. You thought the silence meant you were invisible. But what you didn't realize was that while you were wondering if you mattered, the right people were already being positioned to find you. They made you believe that if you weren't being celebrated, you weren't being noticed. That if no one was applauding, you weren't making an impact. That if doors weren't flying open, you weren't making progress. But the chosen don't move like the rest. Your story was never going to unfold like theirs. Because while they were out there shouting for attention, you were being prepared in the silence. And while they thought nothing was happening for you, your name was moving ahead of you. You see, when you are truly called for something bigger, you don't have to beg for opportunities. You don't have to manipulate people to notice you. You don't have to chase after connections, hoping someone will give you a shot. Because when you are aligned, the right people find you. There were conversations about you that you never heard. There were decisions made in your favor that you never knew about. There were doors being prepared that you never saw coming. And now those doors are about to open. The world teaches people that success is about how loud you can be, about how well you can sell yourself, about how much attention you can grab. But that's not how divine positioning works. True greatness is developed in silence before it is revealed in power. Look at history. Every person who carried something rare was first hidden. David wasn't immediately brought to the throne. He was left in the fields, unnoticed. Joseph wasn't placed in authority overnight. He spent years in obscurity before being elevated. Even the strongest among us have had seasons where it looked like nothing was happening. But that's the difference between those who are called and those who are chasing attention. Because while the world was ignoring you, favor was already setting things in motion. Some of you are struggling to believe this because you've gotten used to feeling unseen. You've convinced yourself that your work, your effort, your resilience, it's all gone unnoticed. But let me tell you something. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. Some of the most powerful shifts in your life have already started. You just haven't caught up to them yet. And when they happen, it won't make sense to the people who thought you were stuck. Because you won't have to explain yourself. You won't have to justify your rise. You won't have to prove why you belong in the spaces you're about to step into. By the time they realize what's happening, it will already be too late to stop it. The connections are already forming. The conversations have already taken place. The favor has already been placed on your name. This is why you never had to fight for a seat at their table, because a different table was already being built for you. And now you're about to walk into places that your past struggles never could have predicted. What once felt like a delay was actually a setup. What once looked like silence was actually a strategy. What once seemed like nothing was happening was actually the greatest acceleration of your life. And here's the part that will shake them. You never had to force any of it, because when something is truly meant for you, it doesn't come through begging. It doesn't come through manipulation. It doesn't come through desperate attempts to be noticed. It comes through alignment. And alignment means that while you were minding your own business, while you were working without recognition, while you were moving in silence, everything was already being arranged for you. You don't have to chase what's already yours. And now you're about to see why the wait was worth it. Number 11. You weren't just going through it. You were becoming the answer they didn't even know they needed. They tried to break you because they feared what you would become. They didn't realize that every hit, every betrayal, every setback was molding you into something unstoppable. You weren't just being tested, you were being transformed. You thought you were just surviving. You thought you were just pushing through, holding on, barely making it. But what you didn't realize, what they didn't realize, was that every single hardship wasn't just about you. It was about who you were becoming. Because the chosen ones are never just participants in life. They are answers. You weren't placed on this earth to blend in. You weren't meant to simply exist, to live a normal life, to follow the same cycles as everyone else. No, you were called to shift things. That's why the fire was so intense. That's why your battles were so brutal. That's why nothing ever came easy for you. Because you weren't being prepared for a mediocre existence. You were being refined to carry something bigger than yourself. And that's what they never understood. They looked at your struggles and assumed you were just unlucky. They saw you suffer and thought it was a sign of weakness. They watched you fight through things they couldn't even comprehend and assumed you were barely hanging on. But what they didn't see was the foundation being built inside of you. Because when you are chosen, you don't just get tested randomly. Every hardship, every delay, every loss was a question. Can you carry the weight of something bigger? Can you hold on to faith even when there's no proof? Can you keep pushing even when everything is against you? And you answered yes every single time. Even when you didn't realize it was a test, you passed. Even when you wanted to quit, you didn't. Even when you felt like breaking, you didn't break. That's why you're still standing. That's why you're still here. Because you weren't just being prepared for yourself. You were being prepared to carry something that would change the game. Look around. The world doesn't need more people who just exist. It needs people who carry answers. Moses wasn't just another man. He was the answer to a nation's freedom. Joseph wasn't just another prisoner. He was the answer to a famine that would have destroyed millions. David wasn't just another shepherd. He was the answer to a kingdom in need of a leader. And you? Your suffering wasn't meaningless. Your struggles weren't random. You weren't just going through it. You were being built into something that others will one day rely on. Some of you are still doubting this. Some of you are still looking at your past and wondering why it had to be this hard. Let me tell you why. Because only processed people can carry weight. Only those who have walked through fire can be trusted to lead others through it. Only those who have suffered and survived can be trusted with real power. You are stepping into a position where people will look to you for strength, where your story will be the very thing that gives them permission to believe again, where your survival will become proof that what tried to destroy them does not have to win. And this is what makes you different. Most people go through hard seasons and come out bitter. But you are coming out better. Most people let pain make them small. But you let pain expand you. Most people go through storms and lose their faith. But you walked through fire and came out with more faith than ever. That's why you're unstoppable now. Because you aren't just someone who survived. You are someone who carries the answers. And that means everything changes from here. Because now, you don't just exist. You lead. Now, you don't just take. You give. Now, you don't just live. You impact. The world will never look at you the same way again. And neither will you. Because the test is over. The preparation is complete. And now, it's time to step into what you were made for. You didn't just survive. You transformed. Every battle, every rejection, every delay wasn't a setback. It was a setup. And now, the test is over. The preparation is complete. And your time has arrived. No more questioning. No more doubting. You've been refined, strengthened, and positioned. Now, step boldly into what's already yours. If this message hit your spirit, like, share, and subscribe. Because more chosen ones need to hear this. When you engage, you signal the platform that this message needs to spread. Drop "I'm ready" in the comments if you know this was for you. Your elevation is already in motion.
Whew.
This is what my mind. I feel so rich. I feel like a billionaire.